At 2:17 a.m., someone broke into my house while I was sleeping. By sunrise, the security footage had vanished, erased with precision, as if it had never existed. I brought the hard drive to a tech repair shop, thinking it was just a technical malfunction. The technician stared at the screen for a long time, then turned to me, his voice lowered. "Sir, you need to leave here immediately." What I saw made my blood freeze. But I told no one. I didn't call the police. I would take revenge in silence, and they would pay for what they had done. Before we go any further, I want to say thank you for being here. If this opening grabbed your attention, take a second to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? I read every message. A quick note before we continue this story: blends imagination with themes that reflect situations many people face. Names and settings are crafted for storytelling, but the lessons behind them are meant to stay with you. I woke up to a noise that didn't fit the silence. 2:03 a.m. My eyes flew open all at once, the way they do when your instincts react before your thoughts can form. A harsh scraping sound, metal against wood. Or maybe something dragged across stone. It came from outside, from the back of the house. I stayed frozen beneath the covers, listening. The bedroom Catherine's and mine for more than 2 decades felt cavernous now. Too still, too hollow. The same walls we painted together. The same window where she used to stand at sunrise with a cup of coffee watching birds hop across the fence. She'd been gone 2 years. 2 years, 3 months, 11 days. I wasn't counting. The noise came again. Closer. No mistaking it this time, it was coming from the backyard. My pulse began pounding in my ears. 67 years old. 4 decades investigating insurance fraud. I had learned one rule above all others: when something feels wrong, it usually is. Every nerve in my body was telling me something wasn't right. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My fingers trembled slightly as the screen lit up. The time changed to 2:04 a.m. The house itself was quiet, except for the steady tick of Catherine's antique clock and the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Measured. Slow. Intentional. Someone was walking across my patio. Someone was in my yard. I pushed the covers aside and stood up, the hardwood floor icy against my feet. My first impulse was to go downstairs and confront whoever was out there. But 40 years of investigative work had taught me something more important: never step into the dark without information. I moved to the window and carefully eased the curtain back. The backyard stretched into shadow. The patio I'd built with Catherine one summer. The fence we installed when Philip was still in high school. The oak tree where we hung a tire swing decades ago. Everything looked undisturbed. The motion lights hadn't triggered. No movement. But I knew what I had heard. 6 months earlier, my neighbor Russell Parker had practically bullied me into installing security cameras. "Frank, you live alone now," he'd said over coffee. 3 break-ins nearby. Don't be stubborn. I'd resisted. Cameras felt like admitting weakness, like acknowledging I wasn't capable anymore. But Russell kept at it, and his wife Diane, who also happened to be my lawyer, had finally sealed it. Peace of mind is worth more than pride, she'd told me. So I had 2 cameras installed, one covering the front door, one watching the backyard. The technician showed me how to access everything through an app. I rarely checked it, until tonight. My hands shook as I opened the app. The loading circle seemed to spin forever before the grainy night vision image appeared. Patio. Fence. Lawn chairs. Stillness. But something was off. One of the lawn chairs had been moved. Yesterday I'd lined them up neatly. Catherine always believed a tidy yard reflected a tidy mind, and I'd kept that habit alive. Now one chair sat several feet away, angled toward the house and the side gate. It stood slightly open, just a few inches. I never left that gate open. Ever. My chest tightened. Someone had been in my yard. Maybe they still were. I switched to playback. The app crawled as I scrolled backward. Each second of buffering stretched thin. My professional instincts kicked in automatically. Stay calm, gather facts, document everything. Calm was getting harder to hold. 2:00 a.m., empty yard. 2:05 a.m., nothing. 2:10 a.m. Gate closed. Still normal. Then 2:17 a.m. The gate shifted. Slowly at first. A push from the outside. A pause. Then a shape detached itself from the darkness. Tall. Controlled. Not stumbling. Not hesitant. This wasn't someone lost. This was someone who knew exactly where they were. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure crossed the patio, quickly dressed in dark clothing, hood up. In night vision, their face was nothing more than a pale blur. They stopped at my back door. A hand reached forward, testing the handle. My breathing quickened. I locked that door every night. Catherine had drilled that into me for years. Doors locked, windows checked, family protected. The figure lingered. 10 seconds, maybe. Then they stepped back, lifted their head, and stared directly into the camera. For a fraction of a second, I almost thought I could see their features, but the infrared washed everything into flat shades of gray. Just the outline of a face, the hollow darkness of the hood. Then they moved out of frame. I waited. 30 seconds. A full minute. Why weren't they leaving? At 2:45 a.m., the screen went black. Not static, not interference, just black. Total darkness. I stared at my phone, my stomach tightening. Power outage, camera failure. But the timestamp kept counting. 2:45:01, 2:45:02, 2:45:03. The system was running. It just wasn't recording anything visible. I checked the status panel. No errors, no warnings. Everything listed as operational. Except there was no image. For 23 minutes, my camera captured nothing but a void. At 3:08 a.m., the picture returned. The patio reappeared. Empty. The chair still out of place. The gate still ajar. But something had changed. The camera angle was slightly higher, tilted upward. More sky. Less ground. Someone had physically adjusted it. My hands went cold. This wasn't random. This wasn't a drunk wandering into the wrong yard. This was someone who knew about the cameras, someone who understood how to disable them, someone who planned this. I went downstairs. The back door was locked. Windows secure, nothing visibly disturbed. But under the kitchen light I saw it. Fine scratches around the keyhole. Fresh. Bright brass exposed where something had scraped the surface. Not forced entry. Not a crowbar. A key. Someone had worked at my lock. And they hadn't been guessing. I stared at the black screen on my phone, my coffee going cold on the kitchen counter. The sun had been up for 2 hours, but I hadn't moved from this spot. I'd been rewatching those 23 minutes of darkness over and over, as if staring at the void long enough would make something appear. It didn't. 2:45 a.m. to 3:08 a.m. A perfect black rectangle where evidence should have been, where answers should have been. This wasn't a technical glitch. The timestamp kept running. The system showed no errors. The camera had been working, it just hadn't been recording anything visible. Or someone had made sure it wouldn't. I thought about those scratches on my back door lock. The moved lawn chair. The adjusted camera angle. Each detail alone could be explained away. Together, they formed a pattern I'd spent 40 years learning to recognize. Someone had done this deliberately, professionally, and they'd known exactly what they were doing. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Russell Parker's name. Russell had been the one to recommend the security company. He'd know what to do. But then I hesitated. Russell was 72, recovering from hip surgery. The last thing he needed was me dragging him into whatever this was at 7 in the morning. No, I needed someone else. Someone who understood technology. Someone who could tell me if this footage could be recovered or if it was gone forever. Jake Martinez. The name came to me suddenly. Jake ran a tech repair shop downtown, Martinez Tech Repair. We'd served on the neighborhood watch together a few years back before Catherine got sick. He was the guy everyone called when their computer died or their phone got hacked. If anyone could make sense of deleted security footage, it was Jake. I found his number and dialed before I could second-guess myself. 3 rings. Then, Martinez Tech Repair, this is Jake. Jake, it's Daniel Crawford. We were on the neighborhood watch together. Mr. Crawford, of course. How are you? His voice was warm, genuine. Haven't seen you at the meetings lately. I've been busy. The lie felt hollow. Truth was, I'd stopped going after Catherine died. Couldn't face the sympathetic looks, the careful questions about how I was holding up. Listen, I need your help with something. Security camera footage that's been tampered with. A pause. Tampered with how? Deleted or blocked? I'm not sure. Can you take a look? Bring the system in. I'll see what I can do. 20 minutes later, I was in my car, the DVR unit heavy on the passenger seat beside me. I disconnected it carefully, wrapping the cables the way the installer had shown me. The whole process felt surreal, like evidence collection in one of my old insurance cases, except this time, I was the victim. The drive through Charlotte was quiet. Morning traffic hadn't started yet. I passed the coffee shop where Catherine and I used to meet Philip for Sunday breakfast. Past the park where we'd celebrated Philip's college graduation. Every street held a memory, and today each one felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of Martinez Tech Repair, my hands were shaking. Jake was waiting inside the shop, empty, except for rows of computers and circuit boards lining the walls. He took the DVR from me without a word, his expression professional but curious. "What am I looking for?" he asked, setting it on his workbench. "Last night, between 2:45 and 3:08 a.m., the footage goes black." He plugged in the unit and pulled up the interface on his computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through menus I didn't understand. I watched him work, my stomach tight with anxiety. After 10 minutes, he sat back. "Mr. Crawford, this wasn't an accident." My throat went dry. "What do you mean?" "Someone accessed your system remotely. See this?" He pointed at lines of code scrolling across his screen. "And these are access logs. Someone logged in at 2:44 a.m. using administrator credentials. They didn't just delete the footage, they overwrote it. Professionally. Like they knew exactly what they were doing." The room felt suddenly colder. "Can you recover it?" Jake's expression was grim. "Maybe. They were good, but people always make mistakes. Leave traces. Digital fingerprints." He started typing again, opening windows I couldn't follow. "This is going to take a few hours, maybe more. Why don't you come back around 4? Can you tell me anything else? Anything about who did this?" He shook his head. "Not yet. But Mr. Crawford." He looked up at me, something unreadable in his eyes. "Whoever did this had access to your system. Either they hacked it remotely, which is hard with modern encryption, or accuse, or what? Or they had your login credentials, your passwords, your access codes. The implication hung in the air between us. Someone close to me, someone who'd been in my house, who knew my systems, who had the technical knowledge to do this. "I'll call you when I find something," Jake said quietly. I left the shop and sat in my car for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. The morning sun was bright now. People starting their normal days, heading to work, getting coffee, living their lives. While mine was unraveling, I drove home slowly, my mind circling the same questions. Who had access to my security system? Who knew my passwords? Who would want to break into my house and then carefully erase the evidence? The answers that came to me, the ones I kept pushing away, were too terrible to consider. By the time I pulled into my driveway, one thought had crystallized. This wasn't random. This wasn't some stranger picking houses at random. This was personal, and they weren't finished. I walked into my house, the one I'd shared with Catherine for 23 years, the one where we'd raised Philip, the one I'd always felt safe in, and locked the door behind me. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel safe anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Philip. "Hey Dad, just checking in. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Everything okay? No. Nothing was okay. But I couldn't tell him that. Not yet. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. I typed back, "Fine, talk later." Then I sat at my kitchen table and waited for Jake to call, because whoever had been in my backyard last night, whoever had erased those 23 minutes, had made one mistake. They'd assumed the deletion was permanent. Jake called at 3:47 p.m. I'd spent the hours in between trying to act normal, making lunch. I couldn't eat, attempting to read the newspaper, staring at the back door and those scratches around the lock. But my mind kept circling back to one question: who had access to my security system? Who knew my house well enough to navigate it in the dark? Who would do this? "Mr. Crawford, I've got something. You need to come see this." 20 minutes later, I was back at Martinez Tech Repair. Jake's expression was serious as he gestured me behind the counter. I recovered most of it," he said. "Took some work, they'd overwritten the files, but data leaves traces. Always does." He pulled up a video file on his monitor. "You're not going to like this." My heart hammered as he hit play. The screen showed my backyard in night vision, the timestamp reading 2:17:04 a.m. For a few seconds, nothing. Then a shadow moved at the edge of the frame, someone climbing over my back fence. Not struggling, not hesitating. They dropped into my yard with practiced ease. "Watch," Jake said quietly. The figure was tall, slim, wearing dark clothing and a hood. They walked straight across my patio like they'd done it 100 times before. No flashlight, no fumbling. They knew exactly where they were going. When they reached my back door, they stopped. And from their pocket, they pulled something out. Even through the corrupted footage, I could see what it was. A key. My hands gripped the edge of Jake's desk as I watched the figure insert the key into my lock, turn it, and open my door like they were coming home from work. No forced entry, no broken window, no picking the lock. They had a key to my house. "Jesus," I whispered. The timestamp jumped more corrupted data, but when it came back it showed 2:25:13 a.m. 8 minutes had passed. The figure emerged from my house, looked around my backyard, then did something that made my blood run cold. They looked directly at the camera. For just a moment the hood shifted. I could make out part of a face, not clearly, the resolution wasn't good enough, but a jawline, the shape of a nose. Then they reached up and adjusted the camera angle, tilting it upward. That's when the feed went completely black. They knew it was there. I said, my voice distant to my own ears. They knew about the camera. Yeah, Jake said. And they knew how to access the storage remotely. That's not something you just figure out. That takes knowledge. Or, he paused. Someone told them how. I straightened up, my mind racing. Well, Jake, can you tell who it is? He shook his head. Not from this footage. The corruption's too bad and they kept their face covered mostly. But Mr. Crawford, he chose his words carefully. Whoever this is, they had a key. That's not a random burglar. That's someone who either has legitimate access to your house or someone you gave a key to. The word hung in the air. Someone I gave a key to. I thought about my house, about the locks Catherine and I had installed 23 years ago. We'd been so careful about keys, one for each of us, one spare in the garage for emergencies. After Catherine died, I'd given that spare to my son Philip, just in case something happened to me, just in case I needed help. Only 2 people besides me had keys to that house, Philip and his wife Isabella. I need a copy of this, I said, my voice hollow. Jake was already burning it to a USB drive. I figured, and Mr. Crawford, you should probably change your locks, today if you can. I took the drive and drove home in a fog. The afternoon sun felt wrong, too bright, too cheerful for what I'd just learned. The neighborhood looked the same as always. Kids playing basketball, someone washing their car, Mrs. Patterson walking her corgi. Everything normal while my world collapsed. When I got home, I went straight to the back door. In the daylight, I could see the scratches more clearly now, fresh ones, the metal still bright, where a key or something had scraped against it. Not from picking the lock, from a key that didn't quite fit right, or from someone using it in the dark without being careful. I stood there for a long time staring at those marks. My son wouldn't do this. Philip was a good man. I'd raised him right. He'd never break into my house, never erase security footage, never. But then I thought about the last 6 months. Small things I'd noticed and dismissed. Papers on my desk rearranged. Bank statements in a different order than Catherine had kept them. Isabella asking questions about my retirement accounts, about my life insurance. Philip getting defensive when I asked about meeting Isabella's family, about her past, about Tennessee where she claimed to be from. The pieces I'd been ignoring suddenly formed a picture I didn't want to see. I pulled out my phone and looked at Philip's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. What would I even say? Hey son, did you break into my house last night? It sounded crazy, paranoid. The suspicions of an old man who'd lost his wife and was seeing threats everywhere. Except the footage was real. The key was real. The erased files were real. Someone had been in my house. Someone with a key only family members had. My phone buzzed. Philip. Hey Dad, Isabella and I want to stop by tomorrow. She's been worried about you. Thinks we should help you organize some of Mom's old paperwork. What do you think? I stared at the message. Organize Mom's old paperwork. Catherine's files. The ones I kept in her old craft room. The room where I stored important documents, bank statements, insurance policies, my will. The same room the intruder had been in for 8 minutes. My hands shook as I typed back, sure, tomorrow works. But my mind was screaming. I sat at my kitchen table as evening fell, the USB drive from Jake in front of me. I plugged it into my laptop and watched the footage again. And again. And again. That figure climbing my fence, walking to my door with confidence, using a key, adjusting the camera afterward. Someone who knew my house, someone I trusted. My son wouldn't do this, would he? But then I thought about 40 years investigating insurance fraud, about all the cases where families destroyed each other over money, Sons stealing from fathers, daughters emptying their mothers' accounts. Love twisted into greed. I'd seen it all. I just never thought I'd see it in my own home. The sun set. The kitchen grew dark around me, and I sat there thinking about that key, about those 8 minutes, about tomorrow, when Philip and Isabella would come to help me organize paperwork. My son wouldn't do this, but someone had, and I was going to find out who. I sat at the kitchen table as darkness settled around me, the USB drive from Jake in front of me, like a piece of evidence I wasn't ready to examine. But my mind wouldn't stop working backward through the last 6 months, pulling at threads I'd been ignoring. Small things. Things I'd dismissed as forgetfulness or coincidence. Papers on my desk that had been moved, not ransacked, just subtly out of place. Bank statements in a different order. My insurance folder open when I remembered closing it. I'd blamed my age, told myself things slip when you live alone. But now I wondered. Then there were Isabella's questions. Always casual, wrapped in concern. How's your retirement fund? Daniel, Philip and I worry about you. Or, do you still have that life insurance from work? Those old policies sometimes aren't worth much. At the time, I'd thought she was being thoughtful. Now those questions felt different, like she was taking inventory. And then there was Tennessee. Isabella always said she was from Knoxville, grew up there, went to high school there. I'd believed her until about 3 months ago when we were watching a Volunteers game. I mentioned Calhoun's, a famous restaurant on the Tennessee River. Every person from Knoxville knows Calhoun's. She'd looked at me blankly. I don't think I know that one. It's right on the river. Been there forever. Oh well, Knoxville's a big city. She'd changed the subject quickly. I'd started paying attention after that. Her accent or lack of one. When Isabella was calm, her voice was neutral, almost generic. But I'd heard her angry once during an argument with Philip in my driveway. Her voice had gone sharp and clipped, but there was no southern softness, no drawl, nothing suggesting 18 years in Tennessee. I'd mentioned it to Philip. Your wife doesn't have much of an accent. He'd shrugged. She worked hard to lose it. Said people don't take you seriously in business if you sound too country. Maybe. But in my experience, an accent comes back when you're tired or angry. Isabella's never did. Because maybe it was never there to begin with. The phone call had come that afternoon at 4:47 p.m. before I'd gone to Jake's shop. Mr. Crawford, this is Nicole Harper from Wells Fargo. I'm calling about a request to update your beneficiary information. My hand had stilled on the coffee pot. What request? Your son Philip submitted paperwork 3 days ago requesting changes to your life insurance beneficiary and access to your accounts. We're required to verify with you before processing. I didn't authorize any changes. Silence. Mr. Crawford, are you aware your son has power of attorney for your accounts? The power of attorney. I'd signed it 2 years ago after Catherine died. I'd had a health scare, and my lawyer recommended it. Just in case something happens and you can't make decisions, Philip can handle things. It was for medical emergencies, hospital decisions, not this. That was for medical purposes. I said, my voice tight. Not financial. Sir, the document we have grants broad authority. It allows your son to make financial decisions on your behalf, including beneficiary changes and account management. My hands had gone cold. Stop any changes. Right now. Nothing gets changed without me physically present. Do you understand? Of course. I'll flag your account immediately. And sir, you might want to come in tomorrow. There are other attempted transactions we should discuss. I'd ended the call and stood there in my kitchen trying to understand. Philip had tried to change my life insurance beneficiary. Philip had tried to access my accounts. Philip, who I'd trusted enough to give legal authority. Philip, who might have given someone that key. Now, hours later, with Jake's USB drive in front of me, all those small things assembled into a picture I didn't want to see. The moved papers, someone had been looking through my files. The questions, someone had been assessing what I had. The bank attempt, someone was making their move. And whoever used that key at 2:17 this morning had known exactly where my camera was. This wasn't random. This was planned. This was family. I looked at the clock. Nearly 8 p.m. The bank had closed hours ago, but tomorrow morning I'd be there when the doors opened. I'd find out exactly what other attempted transactions Nicole Harper wanted to discuss. I'd learn how long this had been going on. 40 years as an insurance adjuster had taught me one thing: when the evidence doesn't line up, someone's usually hiding something. I'd spent my career investigating fraud, false claims, staged accidents, elaborate schemes. I'd seen families destroy each other over money. I just never thought I'd be investigating my own son. The question that had been circling my mind all evening finally crystallized into something clear and cold. If Philip was willing to do this, how far would he go? I thought about that figure in the darkness moving through my backyard with purpose, about the key turning in my lock, about someone standing in my house for 8 minutes doing God knows what. And I thought about tomorrow. Tomorrow I'd get answers. Tomorrow I'd see the evidence in black and white. Tomorrow I'd know the truth about what my son and the woman he married had been planning. But tonight I sat in the darkness with one thought that wouldn't let me go. If I couldn't trust my own family, who could I trust? I stood up, my joints protesting, and walked to the back door one more time. Checked the lock. Looked out at the backyard where someone had climbed my fence just last night. The patio stones gleamed in the moonlight, peaceful and still. Everything looked normal, safe. But I knew better now. Tomorrow morning I'd be at that bank when the doors opened, and then I'd find out just how wrong I'd been about the people I thought I knew. I was waiting in the Wells Fargo parking lot at 8:45 the next morning, watching the employees arrive and unlock the doors. The moment the lights came on, I was out of my truck and walking toward the entrance. The young woman at the front desk looked up with her practiced smile. "Good morning, sir. How can we help you today?" "I need to see Nicole Harper. Now." Something in my voice must have registered, because her smile faltered. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell her Daniel Crawford is here. She'll want to see me." 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Nicole Harper in a small office off the main floor. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice on the phone, maybe mid-30s with sharp eyes and the kind of professional demeanor that comes from years of dealing with people's money problems. "Mr. Crawford," she extended her hand. "I'm glad you came in. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Show me everything." She pulled up my accounts on her computer, angling the screen so I could see. 3 weeks ago, your son came in with power of attorney documentation. Everything appeared legitimate. It had your signature. It was notarized. It gave him authority to manage your accounts. What did he try to do? Nicole clicked through several screens. First, he attempted to change the beneficiary on your life insurance policy from estate to his wife, Isabella Crawford. That change would have meant that upon your death, the $500,000 policy would go directly to her, bypassing probate entirely. $500,000. I'd set that up after Catherine died, meant it to cover funeral expenses and leave something for Philip. Now my own son was trying to redirect it to his wife. What else? He requested access to your checking and savings accounts, said you were having memory issues and he needed to help manage your finances. He wanted to add himself and his wife as joint account holders. My hands tightened on the armrests. Joint account holders meant they could drain everything without my knowledge or permission. Did he succeed? No. Our policy requires verification calls for any major changes when power of attorney is involved, especially for clients over 65. That's why I called you yesterday. But Mr. Crawford, she hesitated. He was very convincing. If we hadn't had that extra protocol in place, these changes would have gone through. I want everything blocked. Right now. Already done as of yesterday. I've placed a hard freeze on your accounts. No changes can be made without you physically present with valid ID. She pulled out a form. But I need you to sign this official revocation. It states that no one, including Philip Crawford, has authority to make changes to your accounts, regardless of what documents they present. I signed it without hesitation, my signature sharp and angry across the page. Nicole watched me carefully. Mr. Crawford, I have to ask, do you feel safe at home? If there's financial exploitation happening, there could be other concerns. The question landed harder than she probably intended. I'm handling it. We can provide resources, elder advocacy services, legal referrals. I said I'm handling it. The words came out sharper than I meant. I took a breath. But thank you for calling, for stopping this. She nodded slowly. I've documented everything in your file. If you need these records for legal purposes, we can provide certified copies. She paused. I've been doing this job for 10 years. I've seen a lot of financial abuse cases. Most of them are family members, and most of them start exactly like this: small requests, legitimate-looking documents, someone the victim trusts. I'm not a victim, I said quietly. No, she agreed. You're not. Because you came in. You asked questions. A lot of people don't. She stood, extending her hand again. Be careful, Mr. Crawford. People who are willing to forge documents and manipulate bank accounts, they don't usually stop there. I left the bank with a folder full of printouts showing exactly what Philip had tried to do, timestamps and all. The evidence was right there in black and white. My son had walked into this bank 3 weeks ago and tried to steal my money, tried to redirect my life insurance, tried to position himself to control everything I had. I sat in my truck for a moment, engine running, staring at those papers. Then I pulled out my phone and called Philip. He answered on the second ring. Dad, is everything okay? We need to talk. Tonight. 7 o'clock. My house. Sure. About what? Bring Isabella. There was a pause. Dad, what's this about? 7 o'clock, Philip. Don't be late. I hung up before he could say anything else. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger, from the betrayal of it, from the calculated coldness of walking into a bank and trying to steal from your own father. I had 6 hours until they arrived. 6 hours to prepare for a conversation I never thought I'd have to have. 6 hours to figure out how to confront my own son with the evidence of what he'd tried to do. I looked down at the papers in the passenger seat. Philip's signature on the forms. The date 3 weeks ago, right around the time Isabella had asked all those questions about my insurance at dinner. Right around the time I'd noticed my papers being moved. This had been planned, carefully, methodically. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated me. They'd thought I was just another lonely old man who wouldn't notice, wouldn't question, wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. I started the truck and headed home already thinking through what I needed to say, what I needed to ask. The folder of bank documents sat on the seat beside me like ammunition. Tonight at 7 o'clock, I'd find out exactly how far this went. I'd find out who my son really was, and I'd find out if there was anything left of the boy I'd raised, or if that person was gone entirely. 6 hours to prepare. I planned to use every minute. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. I'd spent the afternoon going over the bank documents, rehearsing what I'd say, thinking through every angle the way I used to prepare for depositions back when I handled the bigger claims. But when I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Philip stood there looking nervous, avoiding my eyes. Isabella beside him, perfectly composed in a navy dress, her smile just a little too bright. And behind them, a third person I'd never seen before. A man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Dad," Philip started, "this is Kenneth Wallace." The man extended his hand with practiced smoothness. "I'm an estate planning consultant. Philip and Isabella asked me to come along tonight. I hope that's all right." I didn't take his hand. 40 years of evaluating people for a living had given me a pretty good sense of when something didn't add up, and everything about this man, his too confident smile, the way he'd inserted himself into the introduction, the expensive briefcase for what was supposed to be a family conversation set off alarms. "I don't recall inviting you," I said. "Dad, please." Philip's voice had that pleading tone I remembered from his teenage years. "Kenneth's just here to help explain some things. We thought having a professional present might make this easier." "Easier for who?" Kenneth's smile never wavered. "Mr. Crawford, I understand you might be feeling defensive. That's completely natural. But Philip and Isabella are concerned about you, and sometimes having an objective third party can come in." I stepped back, not because I wanted Kenneth there, but because I wanted to see how this played out, and because I'd learned a long time ago that you learn more from watching people lie to your face than you do from shutting them out. They filed into my living room. Kenneth made straight for my coffee table, setting down his briefcase and pulling out a folder of documents before anyone had even sat down. The smooth efficiency of it bothered me, like he'd done this before. Many times. "Coffee?" I asked, playing the role of gracious host, even though my hands were itching to throw them all out. "We're fine," Isabella said quickly. Too quickly, like she wanted to get through this and leave. We all sat. Kenneth spread papers across my coffee table with the practiced movements of a salesman laying out his pitch. I recognized some of the form's power of attorney documents, beneficiary designation forms, property transfer papers. "Mr. Crawford," Kenneth began, his voice taking on that careful, patronizing tone people use when they think they're talking to someone who doesn't understand. "At your age, proper planning is essential. Philip and Isabella have expressed concern about your ability to manage your financial affairs independently and my ability." "What Kenneth means," Isabella jumped in, her voice honey sweet, "is that we worry about you, Daniel. Living alone at your age with all these accounts and properties to manage, it's a lot. We just want to help lighten the burden by changing my life insurance beneficiary to you." The room went silent. Philip's face went pale. Isabella's smile froze. Kenneth's eyes sharpened, his salesman persona slipping just a fraction. "Dad, I can explain. By trying to make yourselves joint account holders." I continued, my voice steady. "By walking into my bank 3 weeks ago with power of attorney documents and trying to get control of my accounts." "Mr. Crawford." Kenneth's voice had lost some of its warmth. "I think there may be some confusion about—" "There's no confusion." I pulled out the folder from Wells Fargo and set it on the table over his papers. "I went to the bank this morning. I have copies of everything Philip tried to do. Timestamp signatures, all of it." Philip's mouth opened and closed. Isabella's hand tightened on his arm, but she recovered quickly, her face rearranging itself into an expression of wounded concern. "Daniel, we were only trying to help. You've been so distracted lately, forgetting things." "Have I?" I leaned forward. "Funny, because my memory's just fine. Good enough to remember someone entering my house at 2 in the morning. Someone with a key. Another silence, heavier this time. I watched their faces carefully. Philip's confusion looked genuine, but Isabella's eyes had gone cold for just a second before the concern mask slipped back on. 2 in the morning. Philip looked between me and Isabella. What are you talking about, a security footage? I let that hang in the air. Someone climbed my fence, used a key to enter my house, and then erased the camera footage. Someone who knew exactly where the camera was. Kenneth stood abruptly. Mr. Crawford, I think perhaps we should reconvene when you're feeling more. I know exactly how I'm feeling. I stood too, and suddenly the living room felt smaller. I feel like I'm being robbed by my own family and by whoever you are. Dad, that's not... I blocked everything at the bank this morning. I continued ignoring Philip. Every account, every policy, every document. Nothing can be changed without me physically present with my ID, your power of attorney revoked. Whatever you three were planning, it's over. Kenneth's professional mask cracked. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold, and for just a moment, I saw something that looked a lot like anger. Then he smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said, gathering his papers with sharp, frustrated movements. It seems we're at an impasse. Perhaps after you've had time to reconsider, get out. The words came out quiet, but absolute. Kenneth stopped mid-movement. Isabella stood pulling Philip up with her. Daniel, you're making a mistake. Out. All of you. Now. Philip looked like he wanted to say something, his mouth opening and closing, but Isabella's hand on his arm steered him toward the door. Kenneth followed his briefcase, clutched tight, his professional composure cracking around the edges. I walked them to the door and watched as they got into Philip's car, a tense, silent group. As they pulled away, I noticed something white on the porch. Kenneth's business card fallen from his pocket or his briefcase. I picked it up. Kenneth Wallace, Pinnacle Estate Services, LLC, with a phone number and address in Charlotte. Back inside, I sat at my computer and typed the name into Google. The company website looked professional enough, smooth photos, polished text about protecting families and planning futures. But something about it felt wrong. The testimonials were generic. The address was a P.O. box. And when I clicked on the About Us section, there were no actual names besides Kenneth's, no credentials listed, no professional licensing numbers. I dug deeper, checking the Better Business Bureau. No listing. Searching for reviews outside their website. Nothing. Like the company barely existed outside that one polished web page. Then I found something. A forum post from 2 years ago, someone warning about a company called Pinnacle Estate Services that had tried to scam their elderly mother. The post had been deleted, but Google's cache still showed it. Professional looking, very convincing, almost lost everything. My hands went cold. This wasn't just Philip and Isabella trying to take advantage. This was organized. This was professional. Kenneth Wallace wasn't just helping my son steal from me. He was running some kind of operation, and my family had walked right into it. Or maybe they'd invited him in. I stared at the business card, at the name that now felt less like a person and more like a threat. Then I did what any insurance adjuster would do when faced with potential fraud. I started documenting everything. I pulled into my driveway just after 4 that afternoon, my mind still processing everything Diane had said about protective orders and capacity declarations. But before I could even turn off the engine, Russell was crossing the street, waving with an urgency that made my stomach drop. Frank. He was at my window before I got the door open. Black Lexus. Been parked down the street for 2 hours. Tinted windows. Just sitting there. I followed his gesture. 3 houses down on the opposite side of the street, sat a black Lexus sedan with windows so dark I couldn't see inside. As I watched, I could feel eyes on me from behind that glass. "You think it's them?" Russell asked quietly. "Only one way to find out." I started toward the car, but Russell caught my arm. "Don't. Not directly." He pulled out his phone. "Jordan's inside. Kid's good with this kind of thing." Jordan Parker appeared a minute later with Russell's dog, a golden retriever, that immediately pulled toward the Lexus, like he'd been trained for exactly this moment. Jordan was maybe 25, wearing a college hoodie and jeans, his phone already in his hand. We watched from my driveway as he let the dog lead him past the black car, pausing while the dog sniffed a mailbox. To anyone watching it, looked completely natural. Jordan's phone stayed low, casual, but I saw the quick movements of someone taking photos. The Lexus didn't move, didn't start. Whoever was inside just sat there letting themselves be photographed. That bothered me more than anything, the confidence of it. Jordan circled back the dog, trotting happily beside him. "Got it," he said when he reached us, already swiping through his phone. "Plate's clear as day. Give me a sec." He had the DMV information pulled up in under a minute, some app I'd never heard of, that his friend at the motor vehicle office had given him access to. "A vehicle registered to..." Jordan's expression changed as he read. "Pinnacle Estate Services, LLC, Charlotte address." The world seemed to tilt slightly. Russell looked at me, understanding dawning on his face. "That's Kenneth Wallace's company," I said. "The man who showed up at my house last night." "They're watching you," Russell said flatly. "Frank, this isn't just family trying to get at your money. This is organized." He was right. Philip and Isabella trying to manipulate bank accounts was one thing, but a professional surveillance operation, a registered company, a man in an expensive suit who knew exactly how to work the system, this was something else entirely. "I need to call Diane," I said, already pulling out my phone. "Do it from inside," Russell advised. "And Frank, keep your doors locked. All of them." I spent the rest of the afternoon on the phone with Diane, explaining about the Lexus, about Jordan's photo, about the Pinnacle Estate Services registration. She told me to forward everything and promised to have her investigator dig deeper. "This confirms what I suspected," she said. "Kenneth Wallace isn't just helping your son. He's running an operation. You're probably not the first elderly person he's targeted, and you won't be the last unless we stop him." The words should have scared me. Instead, they made me angry. These people thought they could intimidate me, could sit outside my house and watch me like I was prey. They were wrong. By 7 that evening, the Lexus was gone, but I knew better than to feel relieved. Surveillance doesn't stop just because you can't see it. I checked every lock twice before going to bed. Set my phone on the nightstand. With the security camera app open, Jake had installed a second camera at the front door after recovering that first footage. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, wondering if I'd ever feel safe here again. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I grabbed it, my heart already racing, and pulled up the camera feed. Someone was standing at my front door. Not trying to break in, not crouching or hiding. Just standing there perfectly still, looking directly at the camera like they knew I was watching. The porch light caught enough detail for me to see tall, slim build, dark jacket. The same general shape as the figure from the backyard footage. But this time, as I watched, they raised one hand and knocked. 3 slow, deliberate knocks that echoed through my house like a heartbeat. Then they stepped back, looked at the camera one more time, and walked away into the darkness. I sat frozen in bed, staring at my phone screen, watching the empty porch. My security system recorded it all. The approach, the knock, the retreat. All of it captured in perfect digital clarity. But what chilled me most wasn't that someone had come to my door at 3 a.m. It was that they'd wanted me to know they were there. This wasn't about stealing anymore. This was a message, and I had no idea what it meant. The face on my phone screen at 3:17 a.m. was Philip. For a moment, I just stared, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. My son, standing at my front door in the middle of the night, the figure who'd knocked 3 times and walked away. It had been him. I was down the stairs and at the door before I could think it through. Philip stood on the porch looking like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him 2 nights ago. His hair was messed up, his eyes red and swollen. He'd been crying. "Dad." His voice cracked. "I need to talk. Without Isabella." I pulled him inside and locked the door behind us. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee neither of us really wanted. Philip's hands wrapped around the mug like he needed something to hold on to. For a long time he didn't speak, just stared into the dark liquid like he might find answers there. "She's lying," he finally said. "About everything. I think God, Dad. I don't even know what I think anymore. Tell me what happened." He took a shaky breath. 2 days ago, Isabella asked me to take her laptop to get fixed, said it was running slow. I brought it home first, thought maybe I could just clear some cache files, save us the money. When I opened it, he stopped rubbing his face with both hands. Why, there were photos, lots of photos, of her but not her. Does that make sense? Not yet. Keep going. She was with different people, different families, and the files they were saved under a different name. Not Isabella, Vanessa something. I thought maybe it was old from before we met, but the dates were recent. Last year, 2 years ago. His voice rose, slightly panic creeping in. "Dad, who is she?" My hands tightened on my own mug. The laptop. He'd found something on her laptop. Something she didn't want him to see. "Did you ask her about it?" "Yeah." He laughed bitterly. "She got furious. Said I was invading her privacy, that I was paranoid controlling. Said if I really loved her, I wouldn't question her." He looked up at me and I saw the confusion of a man whose entire reality was crumbling. And maybe she's right. Maybe I am paranoid. Maybe, Philip, stop. He fell silent. "What else?" I asked quietly. "Kenneth showed up the next day. I didn't call him, Isabella did. He took me aside, said you were the real problem, that you were getting confused, forgetting things, that these accusations about the bank and the house were signs of paranoia. He said I needed to protect Isabella from your delusions." Philip's voice broke. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe you were just... I wanted there to be a simple explanation. But you didn't believe him. No. He shook his head. "Because I know you, Dad. I've known you my whole life. And you don't forget things. You don't make up stories. You spent 40 years spotting fraud for a living." He met my eyes. "So either everyone's lying to me, or I've been lying to myself." The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the sky. "Philip, I need you to listen carefully. Isabella's laptop, do you still have access to it?" She took it back. "Reformatted it," she said. "To fix it." Of course she did. Evidence destroyed before anyone else could see it. "But you saw the files, the photos, the different name. Vanessa Moore." The name came out like he'd been holding it in, waiting to say it out loud to someone who might believe him. "That's what I saw. Vanessa Moore." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Another name. Another identity. This wasn't just about stealing money. This was something else entirely. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Philip looked at me helplessly. "I don't know. She's my wife. 4 years dad. We have a life together. How do I just—" He stopped. "But if she's lying, if Kenneth's lying, if all of this is some kind of— I don't know what to do." I reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. "We figure it out. Together. But Philip, I need you to understand something. The people you're involved with, they're not just trying to steal from me. There's surveillance, there's an organization, there's a pattern. This is bigger than family drama." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful. Act normal around Isabella. Don't let on that you told me anything. And while you do that, I'm going to find out who she really is." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "You want me to spy on her? I want you to protect yourself and help me protect both of us." I paused. "Can you do that?" "Yeah." His voice was stronger now. "Yeah, I can do that." We sat there a while longer as the sky outside slowly turned from black to gray. Philip finished his coffee and stood to leave, looking more steady than when he'd arrived, but still carrying the weight of everything he'd learned. At the door, he turned back. "Dad, I'm sorry. For all of it. The bank stuff, bringing Kenneth here, not believing you sooner. We'll deal with that later. Right now, just be smart. Be careful." He nodded and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. I watched until his taillights disappeared around the corner, then closed and locked the door. I'd gotten my son back. That should have felt like a victory. But standing in my quiet house as morning approached, I realized I'd lost something else, my certainty about what we were dealing with. This wasn't just elder abuse. This wasn't just a family trying to steal an inheritance. This was something organized, something professional, something that involved false identities and surveillance and a woman who'd been living a lie for years. And somewhere in all of it, my son had been just as much a victim as I was. The question was, how deep did this go? And who else was involved? I had a name now. Vanessa Moore. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had last night. And today, really, I'd start finding answers. 2 days after Philip's midnight visit, my phone rang while I was making lunch. "Dad." Philip's voice was careful, measured. "Isabella just asked me to take her laptop to get fixed. She says it's running slow again. Should I do it?" We'd planned this. Philip would act normal, watch for opportunities. This was the first one. "Take it to Jake Martinez," I said. "Tell him I sent you." An hour later, my phone rang again. "Jake. Mr. Crawford, you need to get down here, now." I was in my truck before he'd even hung up. When I walked into Martinez Tech Repair, Jake was standing behind his counter with an expression I'd never seen on him before, somewhere between shocked and angry. "Philip left about 20 minutes ago," he said. "Told me you'd want me to look at this carefully." He gestured to the laptop open on his workstation. "Mr. Crawford, your daughter-in-law isn't who she says she is." He turned the screen toward me and my world tilted. The laptop was open to a folder of photos, dozens of them, and in every single one I saw Isabella, but not the Isabella I knew. These photos showed her with different people, different families, different settings. In one, she was posed with an elderly couple at what looked like a holiday dinner, all smiles and warm embraces. In another, she stood with a man and 2 teenage boys in front of a house I'd never seen. "Who are these people?" I asked. "I don't know. But look at this." Jake clicked to another folder. The files were labeled with dates and names. Not Isabella Crawford. Vanessa Moore, Ohio 2017 to 2018. Jessica Palmer, Cincinnati 2019. Isabella Crawford, Charlotte 2020 to present. My hands gripped the edge of his desk. She's done this before. Multiple times from what I'm seeing. Jake opened another window showing email accounts. She's got 3 different email addresses saved in here. Jessica.Palmer at Vanessa.moore.personal at The Isabella.Crawford one is the newest. What else? Jake pulled up a spreadsheet. Financial records. She kept them all on here. I guess she didn't think anyone would ever see this laptop. He pointed at the screen. Look at the pattern. Ohio 2018 $42,000 deposit in March, account emptied by June. Tennessee 2020 $68,000 in January, gone by April. And here, he scrolled down, Georgia 2022 $31,000, deposited withdrawn 3 months later. The room felt like it was spinning. Those weren't just numbers. Those were families, people like me, people who'd trusted someone, taken them in, maybe given them power of attorney, or added them to accounts, only to watch everything disappear. Mr. Crawford. Jake's voice sounded distant. You okay? I wasn't okay. I was staring at evidence that my son had married a professional con artist, that the woman who'd been coming to my house for 4 years, asking me about my finances, smiling at family dinners, was someone who'd done this at least 3 times before. Maybe more. Can you copy all of this? My voice came out rough. Already done. Jake held up a USB drive. Every file, every photo, every email, it's all here. But Mr. Crawford, there's something else you need to know. What? The travel records. She's got airline confirmations, hotel reservations all saved. Ohio, Tennessee, Georgia, but also Nevada, Florida, California. And the dates overlap. Some of these trips were taken while she was supposedly living in Tennessee, while she was supposedly working a job there. She was running multiple cons at once. That's what it looks like. Jake's expression was grim. This isn't some desperate person making bad decisions. This is organized, professional. She's been doing this for years. I took the USB drive, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Thank you for calling me, for all of this. Mr. Crawford, you should go to the police. I'm calling my lawyer first. I walked out to my truck and sat there for a moment just breathing. Then I pulled out my phone and called Diane Foster. She answered on the second ring. Daniel, what's wrong? We have a bigger problem than I thought. I could hear my voice shaking. Isabella, my daughter-in-law, she's not who she says she is. She's done this before. Multiple times. Different families, different states, different names. There was a pause. What kind of evidence do you have? Everything. Photos, financial records, email accounts, travel history, all digital. Jake Martinez pulled it off her laptop. Gilma, don't let that laptop out of your sight. And Daniel, her voice sharpened with urgency. Bring everything to my office, now. We need to move on this before anyone realizes what you found. Before I reveal what Sarah uncovered in that investigation file, I need to know something. If you're still here with me, comment the number 17 below just 17. That's how many years she could be facing, if this goes where I think it's going. I want to see who's still standing with Daniel right now. And a quick note before we continue, the next chapter includes dramatized elements crafted for storytelling and reflection. If this direction isn't for you, this is your moment to step away. Diane's office felt different the second time. Less refuge, more war room. I handed her the USB drive at 4:30 that afternoon. She plugged it into her laptop without a word. Her expression hardening as she clicked through Jake's files. The photos, the emails, the financial records spanning 3 states and 4 years. This is beyond elder abuse, she said finally. This is organized fraud. She reached for her phone. I'm calling someone. The someone was Sarah Mitchell, a private investigator Diane had worked with on previous cases. Sarah arrived within an hour, a woman in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and a leather portfolio that had seen better days. Show me everything, Sarah said. We spent 90 minutes walking through the evidence. Every photo, every email address, every deposit and withdrawal. Sarah took notes in a shorthand I couldn't read, occasionally asking questions that revealed decades of experience. This will take about a week, she said, as she copied the USB contents. Maybe less if I get lucky. I'll run background checks on all 3 names, cross-reference with law enforcement databases, check civil court records in Ohio, Tennessee, and Georgia. She looked at me directly. Mr. Crawford, if this woman is who I think she is, you're not her first victim. I drove home as the sun set over Charlotte Russell's porch light already on like a beacon. The week that followed was the longest of my life. I kept my routine. Morning coffee, afternoon walk, evening news. But every moment felt suspended waiting for Sarah's call. Philip texted twice asking if there was any news. I told him to sit tight, keep acting normal around Isabella. The hardest part was knowing what I knew and having to wait for confirmation. Diane called on day 13. Sarah has preliminary results. Can you come in this afternoon? Sarah's folder was 6 inches thick. She opened it methodically, laying out documents like a prosecutor building a case. Driver's licenses, marriage certificates, police reports, bank statements. Each page another piece of a pattern I'd been too close to see. Isabella Crawford doesn't exist before 2020, Sarah began. No birth certificate, no driver's license history, no credit report. She appears fully formed the year she married your son. She slid 3 driver's license photos across the desk. Same woman, 3 different names. Vanessa Moore, married in Cleveland, 2017. Divorced 2018. Her ex-husband filed a civil suit, claiming she emptied their joint account $68,000 2 weeks before serving him papers. Case was settled out of court. Yet next photo. Jessica Palmer, this is where it gets serious. Sarah tapped an official document. Active arrest warrant out of Ohio issued February 2019. She's wanted for theft from Theodore and Ellen Kowalski, ages 73 and 69. $420,000 drained from their retirement accounts over 6 months. The Kowalskis lost their home. I felt my insurance adjuster brain kick in calculating. That's at least $488,000 across 2 confirmed victims. 5 victims, Sarah corrected. I found 3 more. A widower in Tennessee 2020, a couple in Georgia 2022, another elderly man in Charlotte 2015. That one was before she refined her method. Dementia patient. She got him to change his will before his family caught on. She pulled out a map with colored pins. She moves every 18 to 24 months, changes her name, changes her story. Always targets men over 65, recently widowed or divorced. Always uses romance and trust as the entry point. And Kenneth Wallace? I asked. Sarah's expression darkened. Kenneth Wallace is Marcus Reeves, age 54, originally from Atlanta. He served 3 years in Georgia for real estate fraud. He's been investigated twice by the Georgia Attorney General's Office for elder financial exploitation. Both cases dropped due to lack of evidence. She pulled out surveillance photos. Kenneth Marcus meeting with Isabella at a Starbucks in Tennessee, 2020. They've worked together before. He provides the legal framework, the estate planning cover story. She provides the access to the victims. Diane leaned forward. This is a multi-state operation, Daniel. 5 confirmed victims, possibly more. Total damages likely exceed $2 million. This is federal jurisdiction now. We need to contact the FBI, oh, Sarah added. They have a task force for exactly this kind of fraud. I sat back, my mind reeling. I'd known Isabella was lying. I'd known Kenneth was involved. But this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Philip doesn't know, I said quietly. He's a victim too. I know, Diane said, and that's going to work in his favor. But we need to move fast. If Isabella suspects we're investigating, she'll disappear. She's done it before. What do we do? I asked. Tomorrow morning, we contact the FBI Charlotte field office, Diane said. I have a contact there, Lisa Moreno, White Collar Crimes Division. With this evidence, they'll open an investigation immediately. She closed the folder. In the meantime, you do nothing. Act normal. Don't confront her. Don't tell Philip yet. We can't risk spooking her before the FBI is involved. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. 40 years investigating insurance fraud had taught me to spot patterns, to trust evidence over emotion. But this wasn't a claim file. This was my son's life. My family. As I stood to leave, Sarah handed me a final document. One more thing, she said, to Marcus Reeves. His real name is Kenneth Marcus Wallace. He's been using variations of his own name this whole time. Diane met my eyes. They're confident. They think they're untouchable. I drove home as darkness fell over Charlotte Russell's kitchen light visible through the trees. I thought about the 5 victims before me, the families destroyed, the trust betrayed. Isabella or Vanessa or Jessica or whoever she really was had done this before. She would do it again. Unless we stopped her. Diane's call came on day 17, 4 days after our meeting with Sarah Mitchell. The FBI wants to meet with you, she said carefully. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll go with you. I'd known this was coming, but hearing those words made my hands shake. The FBI. This was real. What time? I asked. 2 o'clock. Their Charlotte field office. The FBI building on Microsoft Way looked ordinary modern glass and steel like any tech company. But the security was different. Metal detectors, ID verification, visitor badges that tracked our every movement. Agent Lisa Moreno met us on the 3rd floor. Mid-40s gray suit, sharp eyes that had seen too many lies. She led us to a conference room where a digital evidence board covered one wall. Our USB files. Blown up. Organized. Connected with red lines to photos I'd never seen. Mr. Crawford. Miss Foster. Agent Moreno gestured to chairs. Thank you for coming. What you've uncovered is part of something we've been investigating for 18 months. 18 months. While I'd been mourning Catherine, they'd been building a case. Operation Golden Years, she continued. A criminal network targeting elderly Americans across the Southeast. We've identified 6 confirmed victims in 4 states. Total damages exceed $3.2 million. She clicked a remote. The screen shifted to surveillance photos, Isabella but not Isabella, with different men. Different cities. Different years. The woman your son married is part of a 5-member organized crime ring. She's operated under multiple identities since 2015. Vanessa Moore in Ohio. Jessica Palmer in Cincinnati. Isabella Crawford here in Charlotte. Agent Moreno pulled up financial records. The pattern is consistent. She targets recently widowed or divorced men over 60 with assets exceeding $1 million. She establishes relationships through their adult children, usually sons. Marriage follows within 18 to 24 months. Another click. Kenneth Wallace appeared on screen. Her partner is Marcus Reeves, age 54. Criminal record includes fraud, forgery, conspiracy. He provides the legal infrastructure estate planning powers of attorney trust modifications. While she gains emotional access, he handles the financial extraction. The screen showed a network diagram. 6 families, 6 names I didn't recognize, lines connecting them all to the same 2 faces. Ohio 2017. Robert and Helen Wagner. $210,000 stolen. Agent Moreno's voice was clinical, but anger lurked underneath. Ohio 2019. Theodore Kowalski. $420,000. His wife died 3 months after he lost everything. My chest tightened. Tennessee 2020. Dennis Patterson, $380,000. Georgia 2022. The Hendersons, $570,000. Florida 2023. James Martinez, $650,000. Each number was a life destroyed, a family torn apart. The 6th victim was here in Charlotte 2024. Arthur Wilson, $490,000. He died of a heart attack 2 weeks after discovering the fraud. She paused. You're the 7th target, Mr. Crawford, and you're the first one who caught them before they could finish. How? I asked. How did you connect all this? A detective in Tennessee noticed similarities across elderly fraud cases. He contacted us. We started pulling threads, database matching financial patterns, surveillance footage from banks. She gestured to our USB. But we've never had evidence like this. Security footage, digital files, a laptop with her real communications. You've given us more in 2 weeks than we've gathered in 18 months. What's her real name? I asked. Agent Moreno exchanged glances with another agent. We know her identity, but we can't share that information, yet it's part of our operational security. When the time comes, you'll know exactly what to say. She opened a small case on the table. Inside was a device the size of a quarter. We need you to wear a wire. Call them. Tell them you've changed your mind, that you're ready to sign whatever they want. Get them in your house, get them talking. They'll suspect something, I said. Possibly. But they're invested. 4 years with your son. $625,000 in home equity alone. Over $1 million in total assets. They're close to a big payoff. They'll take the risk. I looked at Diane. She nodded once. Your son, Agent Moreno added. We've verified his story completely. The laptop discovery, the timeline, everything. He's a victim too. No charges will be filed against him. Relief washed through me. Philip was innocent. The FBI confirmed it. We need 2 days to prepare, Agent Moreno said. Surveillance teams, tactical positioning, backup units. You'll make the call on day 19, evening meeting at your house. We'll be 2 blocks away, listening to everything. She slid a thin folder across the table. Study this. It's your script questions to ask topics to bring up phrases that will get them talking. Practice until it feels natural. I opened the folder. Pages of dialogue, scenarios, contingencies. One more thing, Mr. Crawford. Agent Moreno's expression softened slightly. When this goes down, your son will be there. He'll see everything. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Philip at 3 a.m., disheveled and crying. Philip discovering Isabella's laptop. Philip realizing the woman he loved was a lie. He deserves to see the truth, I said. Good. Agent Moreno stood. 48 hours, then we end this. I left the FBI building at 4:30 with a wire device in my pocket and a script in my hand. Diane walked me to my car. You don't have to do this, she said. Yes, I do. I looked at the folder. 6 families didn't get justice. 6 families lost everything while these people moved on to the next victim. I'm doing this for them. I drove home as the sun set over Charlotte. In 48 hours, I'd face the woman who'd tried to destroy my family. The woman who'd manipulated my son for 4 years. I didn't know her real name yet, but I would. Before I tell you what happened the night they walked back into my house, type the word "ready" in the comments. I need to know you're still with me before this goes any further, because what happens next changes everything. And one more thing, some details in the upcoming events are creatively constructed for narrative impact. If this isn't your kind of story, you're free to stop here. 2 days felt like 2 years. I practiced the script until the words felt natural. Memorized the questions Agent Moreno had written. Tested the wire device hidden under my shirt, so small I could barely feel it, but knowing the FBI was listening made it weigh like lead. Day 19 arrived with clear skies and cold wind. At 3 in the afternoon, I made the call. Isabella answered on the second ring. Daniel. Her voice was cautious. I've been thinking, I said, following the script, about what you and Kenneth said, about planning for the future. I paused, let her hear the resignation in my voice. I'm ready to sign whatever documents you need. Silence. Then, that's wonderful, Daniel. I'm so glad you've come around. Too eager. Too quick. Agent Moreno had been right, they couldn't resist. Can you come by tonight? I asked. 7 o'clock. Bring the paperwork. Of course. Kenneth will want to be there too to make sure everything's proper. Fine. I kept my voice tired, defeated. Philip should come. This affects his future too. We'll all be there, Isabella said. Her voice was warm, now confident. You're making the right choice, Daniel. I hung up and stared at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. At 6:30, Agent Moreno's voice came through my earpiece, a tiny receiver they'd given me that morning. FBI surveillance van in position 2 blocks south. Tactical team staged at the neighbor's house. Russell Parker has been briefed and evacuated. We're ready when you are, Mr. Crawford. I looked around my living room, the same room where Catherine and I had celebrated 30 anniversaries, where Philip had opened Christmas presents as a boy, where I'd confronted Kenneth Wallace 2 weeks ago. Tonight, it would become a crime scene. I'm ready, I said quietly. At 7 o'clock, exactly, headlights swept across my front window. I watched through the curtains as Philip's car pulled into the driveway. 3 people got out. Philip looked nervous. Isabella looked confident. Kenneth Marcus looked like a man about to collect a paycheck. The doorbell rang. I opened it, playing the tired old man they expected to see. Come in. Philip hugged me, whispered, Are you sure about this, Dad? I'm sure, I said. And I was. They settled into the living room. Kenneth spread documents across the coffee table, power of attorney forms, trust amendments, beneficiary changes. Everything designed to transfer my assets into their control. This is straightforward, Kenneth said in his smooth estate planner voice. We're just protecting your interests, making sure Philip's taken care of if anything happens. Isabella sat close to Philip, her hand on his knee, playing the devoted daughter-in-law. I wondered how many times she'd sat like this with other families, other victims. Before I sign anything, I said slowly, I want to understand something, Isabella. She smiled. Of course, Daniel. What would you like to know? Tell me about your family. Your real family, back in Tennessee. Her smile didn't waver. I've told you about them. My parents passed away when I was young. I don't have much family left." "That's odd," I said, "because when you talk about Knoxville, you don't have the accent. And when I mentioned Calhoun's restaurant, you didn't know what I was talking about." A flicker of something crossed her face. I've been away a long time. You lose the accent." Philip looked confused. "Isabella, what's he talking about?" I pulled out my phone, opened the photos Jake had recovered from her laptop. "Philip found these pictures on your old computer. You with different families, different names." Kenneth stood abruptly. "This is inappropriate. We came here in good faith." "Sit down, Marcus," I said. He froze. "What did you call me, Marcus Reeves? That's your real name, isn't it? Not Kenneth Wallace." I looked at Isabella. "And you? How many names have you used? Vanessa Moore in Ohio, Jessica Palmer in Cincinnati." Isabella's mask was cracking. Philip pulled away from her, staring. "Dad, what's going on?" "Tell him," I said to Isabella. "Tell him the truth. Tell him about the 6 families before us. Tell him about the $2 million you've stolen." "You're being paranoid," Isabella said, but her voice had changed. Harder, colder. "Philip, your father is confused." "I know who you are," I said quietly, and then I spoke the name Agent Moreno had finally revealed to me this morning. "Elena." The room went dead silent. Isabella Elena stared at me. All pretense gone. "Who told you that name? Elena Voss," I continued. 37 years old, 10 known identities, 15 possible victims. You've been running this con since you were 23. Philip stood up, backing away from her. "Isabella, tell him he's wrong. Please tell him he's wrong." Elena looked at Philip, and for a moment something almost human crossed her face. Then it vanished. She bolted for the front door. She made it 3 steps before the door burst open. "FBI, hands up." Agent Moreno and 4 other agents flooded into my living room, weapons drawn. Elena froze. Hands raised, her face twisted with rage and calculation. Marcus ran for the back door. He didn't make it far. 2 agents tackled him in my kitchen. I heard him hit the floor hard, heard the metallic click of handcuffs. "Elena Voss, you're under arrest." Agent Moreno said, her voice calm and professional. "Fraud, conspiracy, theft, crossing state lines to commit felony crimes." As they cuffed her, Elena looked back at me. Not angry, not scared, just cold, empty, like she was already planning her next move, her next victim, her next name. Philip stood in the middle of my living room, watching the woman he loved being led away in handcuffs. Then he turned to me. "Dad." His voice broke. "Did you know? This whole time, did you know? I wanted to tell him about the investigation, about the FBI, about the 6 families who'd lost everything. But all I could see was my son's face, the trust draining out of it, replaced by betrayal." "Philip, did you know?" he asked again, and his voice cracked like he was 12 years old, and I'd just told him his mother was dying. I opened my mouth, but Agent Moreno spoke first. "Your father saved your life, son, and probably 6 more families after you." Philip looked at me, then at Elena being pushed into an FBI vehicle outside, then back at me. He couldn't finish. He walked out the door and didn't look back. I stood in my living room surrounded by FBI agents documenting the scene and listened to my son's car pull away. We'd caught them. We'd stopped them. But watching Philip leave, I wasn't sure we'd won anything at all. The police lights painted my living room in alternating red and blue. Through the window, I watched FBI agents loading evidence boxes into vans. Neighbors stood on their porches, trying to understand what had just happened. Philip sat on the couch where Elena had sat an hour ago. He hadn't moved since Agent Moreno asked him to stay. I wanted to sit beside him, put my arm around him like I had when he was 12 and Catherine first got sick. But I didn't know if he'd let me. Agent Moreno came back inside her professional mask, softened slightly. Philip, I need to ask you some questions, for the record. You're not under investigation. You're a witness and a victim, but we need your statement. Philip nodded without looking up. Okay. She sat across from him, tablet in hand. When did you first meet the woman you knew as Isabella Crawford? 4 years ago. Philip's voice was flat hollow. October 2020. Church charity event. St. Mark's downtown. She was volunteering at the food drive. I'd forgotten about that. Philip had started going to St. Mark's after Catherine died, looking for community, looking for something to fill the emptiness. Elena had been looking too, for her next victim. She seemed perfect. Philip continued. Kind, funny. She asked about my family, seemed genuinely interested in my life. We started getting coffee after volunteer shifts, then dinners. It felt natural. It felt real. Agent Moreno typed notes. When did she meet your father? 6 months later. April 2021. I'd been wanting them to meet, but she kept saying she was nervous, wanted to wait until the time was right. Philip laughed bitterly. Now I know she was just planning, calculating when to make her move. What about Kenneth Wallace Marcus Reeves? Agent Moreno asked. Isabella introduced us about a year ago. Said he was a friend's father and estate planning expert. After Dad's health scare last year. Philip glanced at me. I'd had a false alarm with chest pains. Nothing serious, but it had scared us both. Isabella suggested Dad needed to plan for the future. Kenneth seemed legitimate, professional. They usually do, Agent Moreno said quietly. Philip, I need you to understand something. Elena Voss is a professional. She's been doing this for over a decade. Everything about your relationship was engineered. The charity event wasn't coincidence. They researched their targets. Your father was recently widowed, financially stable in his mid-60s. You were his only child working as a teacher, good-hearted. You were the perfect access point. Philip's hand started shaking. 4 years. 4 years of my life. We talked about having kids, about buying a house together. His voice broke. Was any of it real? No, Agent Moreno said, and I was grateful for her honesty. I'm sorry, Philip, but no. Elena Voss doesn't form real relationships. She forms strategic ones. Philip stood abruptly, walked to the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, my son trying not to fall apart. Philip, Agent Moreno continued gently, we've reviewed her phone and computer. The texts she sent you, the emails, the photos, they were all part of a script. We found similar message templates on her laptop. Same phrases sent to previous victims' family members. Same spontaneous date ideas. Same timeline. Stop. Philip's voice was barely a whisper. Please stop. Agent Moreno closed her tablet. You're a victim in this case, Philip, not an accomplice. You'll need to testify when this goes to trial, but you're not facing any charges. I want to be very clear about that. Philip turned around. I helped them. I gave her access to Dad. I encouraged him to meet with Kenneth. I signed papers that you believed were legitimate. Agent Moreno interrupted. You had no knowledge of their criminal intent. You were manipulated by professionals who've done this successfully 6 times before. The difference is your father caught them. You helped him catch them, whether you realized it or not. After Agent Moreno left with her team after the last FBI van pulled away and the neighbors finally went inside, it was just Philip and me in the quiet house. He stood by the fireplace, staring at a photo from his college graduation. Catherine and I flanking him, all three of us, smiling at a future that had seemed so certain. "Why, almost cost us everything," he said finally. "The house, your savings, everything Mom worked for." "You didn't know," I said. "I should have known. There were signs, small things that didn't add up. But I ignored them because I wanted it to be real. I wanted to believe someone could love me like that." He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "How do I trust anyone again? How do I trust myself?" I crossed the room, pulled him into a hug like I hadn't done since he was a boy. He collapsed against me, and I felt him sob deep, wrenching sounds that broke my heart more than anything Elena Voss had done. "One step at a time," I whispered. "We'll figure it out together." We stood there a long time, my son grieving a relationship that had never existed, me holding him grateful he was alive and free and still mine. Finally, Philip pulled back, wiped his face. "I don't want to go home tonight, to the apartment. Everything there." She picked out the furniture, the dishes, the damn curtains. "Stay here," I said immediately. "Your room's the same." He looked surprised. "You kept it." "Of course I kept it. I always hoped you'd come back someday." I managed a small smile, though I imagined better circumstances. Philip almost laughed, almost. Can I just sleep here tonight? I don't want to think anymore." "Stay as long as you need." I watched him climb the stairs to his old room, the room with his high school baseball trophies and the glow-in-the-dark stars Catherine had helped him stick to the ceiling when he was 8. Downstairs, I sat in my living room alone with the silence. We'd stopped Elena Voss. We'd caught the criminals. We'd saved $625,000 and probably saved future victims. But looking at the empty space where my son had sat, broken and betrayed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd lost something too. Something that might take longer than one night to rebuild. 6 weeks after the arrest, Philip and I walked into the federal courthouse together. The building was imposing, all marble columns and security checkpoints. Media vans lined the street outside. Agent Moreno had warned us this would be public. Operation Golden Years had become national news. "Elderly fraud ring busted," the headlines read. "Romance scammer faces federal charges." Philip wore the suit Catherine had bought him for job interviews 5 years ago. It hung a little loose now he'd lost weight in the weeks since Elena's arrest. "You ready?" I asked as we approached the metal detectors. He nodded. "Let's get this over with." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Elena sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked ordinary. That was the scariest part, how ordinary she looked. Marcus Reeves wasn't there. He'd taken a plea deal 3 weeks earlier, agreeing to testify against Elena in exchange for a reduced sentence. 7 years instead of 15. Agent Moreno said his cooperation had been valuable. Names, methods, bank accounts they hadn't known about. The prosecution called me first. I took the stand, raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, walked me through everything. The security footage, the missing files, the laptop discovery, the USB evidence. "Mr. Crawford, in your 40 years as an insurance adjuster, how many fraud cases did you investigate?" "Hundreds," I said. "Maybe over 1,000. "In your professional opinion, was this fraud sophisticated?" "Extremely. The documentation was flawless. The legal framework was sound. If I hadn't caught them in the act, they would have succeeded." I kept my voice steady, clinical. treated it like any other case I'd worked. But when the prosecutor showed the jury photos of the 6 previous victims' elderly faces, some no longer alive, I had to pause. These people trusted her, I said. Just like my son did. Elena's lawyer tried to rattle me on cross-examination, suggested I'd misunderstood innocent actions, that I'd been paranoid. I just looked at him. I have 40 years of experience identifying fraud, I said. This was fraud. Philip testified next, watching him walk to the stand, seeing him raise his hand, and swear that oath I'd never been prouder or more heartbroken. The prosecutor was gentle with him. Philip, when did you first suspect something was wrong? Not until the end, Philip said quietly. I found the laptop by accident. Even then, I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I loved her. I thought she loved me. Did the defendant ever give you any indication that your relationship wasn't genuine? No, she was perfect. Every birthday, every anniversary, every moment felt real. That's what made it work. I never suspected, because there was nothing to suspect. She was that good. The defense attorney tried to suggest Philip had known about the fraud, had been complicit. Philip just looked at Elena. I would have died for her, he said. I was planning to propose next month. I'd bought a ring. His voice broke. I was going to ask my dad for his blessing, and the whole time she was planning to rob him. Elena didn't react, just sat there expressionless. 2 other victims testified via video link. A widow from Ohio whose husband had died 3 months after losing everything. A man from Georgia who'd lost his deceased wife's life insurance payout. They all told the same story. The perfect relationship, the trusted advisor, the gradual transfer of assets, the devastating discovery. The prosecution presented financial records showing the pattern. Elena and Marcus had operated in 6 states over 9 years. 7 victims, over $3 million stolen. This wasn't desperation, Jennifer Walsh told the jury in closing arguments. This wasn't survival. This was professional, calculated predation. The defendant targeted grieving, vulnerable people and destroyed their lives. For money. The defense tried to paint Elena as a troubled woman from a difficult background, someone who'd made mistakes, but deserved compassion. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, Elena stood emotionless as the forewoman read the verdict. Count 1 wire fraud. Guilty. Count 2 conspiracy to commit fraud. Guilty. Count 3 identity theft. Guilty. Guilty on all 17 counts. The sentencing came a week later. Philip and I returned to the courthouse, sat in the same seats, watched Elena stand before the judge. Ms. Voss, the judge said, "You have shown no remorse for your actions. You have destroyed families, stolen life savings, contributed to the deaths of at least 2 victims. You are a danger to society." 15 years. Federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 12 years. As the marshals led Elena away, she turned and looked directly at Philip. Not angry, not sad, just empty, like he'd never mattered at all. Philip didn't look away this time. He held her gaze until she disappeared through the door. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Microphones, cameras, questions shouted from every direction. I stopped at the top of the steps, Philip beside me. "My son and I are still standing together," I said simply. "That's all we have to say." Philip's hand found mine as we walked down the steps. Squeezed once. We drove home in silence. But it was a different silence than 6 weeks ago. Not broken, just quiet. Justice had been served. The predator was caged. 1 year after the arrest, I sat at Catherine's old desk, sorting through paperwork that had piled up during the chaos of the trial. Bank statements, legal documents, letters from the FBI fund. Evidence of a year I'd survived but never wanted to repeat. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. Russell's coffee thermos sat on my counter, still warm from his 7:15 visit. Some routines had become sacred in the aftermath: his daily check-ins, Philip's Wednesday dinners, my Tuesday support group meetings. I picked up a letter from the FBI Victim Services Division. Inside was information about a national conference on elder fraud prevention scheduled for September in Washington, D.C. They were inviting survivors to share their stories to help train law enforcement on recognizing sophisticated fraud operations. My first instinct was to throw it away. I'd testified once. I'd told my story to the jury, to the media outside the courthouse, to my support group. How many times did I need to relive those months? But then I thought about Dorothy from my support group, about the man in Georgia who'd lost everything, about the families I'd never met, who might be facing the same situation right now today, while I sat in my kitchen, deciding whether speaking up one more time was worth the discomfort. I set the letter aside to think about later. My phone buzzed with a text from Philip. "Bringing Sarah to dinner tonight, if that's okay. Want her to try your pot roast." Sarah had been a constant presence for 3 months now, a fourth-grade teacher with a steady smile and patient eyes who'd listened to Philip's entire story on their first date and hadn't run away. That alone told me something about her character. I texted back, "She's always welcome. Should I make extra? Please. She eats like a normal person, not like she's afraid of food." I smiled at that. Philip's humor had returned slowly, carefully, like a plant growing back after a hard frost. His therapist said it was a good sign. The ability to joke about his own recovery meant he was processing the trauma instead of drowning in it. The pot roast would take hours, so I started early. Catherine's recipe, the one she'd made every Sunday for 20 years. Beef potatoes, carrots, onions, her secret blend of herbs she'd never written down. But I'd watched her make enough times to memorize. While the meat browned, I thought about the past year. The immediate aftermath of Elena's arrest had been chaos, media attention, legal proceedings, FBI interviews. But as the months passed and the news cycle moved on, I'd been left with the quieter, harder work of rebuilding trust in a world that had proven itself capable of profound deception. The support group had helped more than I'd expected. Listening to other people's stories reminded me I wasn't uniquely foolish or particularly vulnerable. This happened to smart people, careful people, people who'd spent their whole lives making sound decisions. The common thread wasn't stupidity. It was humanity. The willingness to trust, to believe in goodness, to give people the benefit of the doubt. Dorothy had made remarkable progress. She'd filed a civil suit against the financial advisor who'd stolen from her. And while she'd never recover all the money, she'd recovered something more important, her sense of agency. She'd fought back. She'd refused to be a silent victim. I spent 3 months feeling ashamed, she'd told the group last week. Like I should have known better. But then I realized he spent 20 years building my trust so he could steal from me. 20 years. That's not my failure. That's his crime. The group had erupted in applause. It was a small moment, but it mattered. By 5:30, the pot roast was filling my kitchen with the kind of smell that made a house feel like a home. I set the table for 3, using the good plates Catherine had insisted we save for special occasions. Every dinner with Philip felt special now. Every normal moment was a small victory against what we'd almost lost. Philip and Sarah arrived at 6. Sarah carrying a bakery box with something chocolate inside. "Mr. Crawford," she said warmly, handing me the box. "Philip says you have a weakness for chocolate cake." "Philip talks too much," I said, but I was smiling. "And please call me Daniel, Mr. Crawford makes me feel like I'm about to investigate someone's insurance claim. She laughed, a genuine sound that filled the kitchen with lightness. I could see why Philip was drawn to her. After 4 years with someone who'd calculated every word and gesture, authenticity must have felt like oxygen. Over dinner, Sarah asked questions about Catherine, about our life together, about the house and the neighborhood. Not prying questions, just genuine interest. She listened when I talked about Catherine's garden, about the rose bushes she'd planted that Russell now tended, about the coffee shop where we'd met 45 years ago. She sounds wonderful, Sarah said simply. I wish I could have known her. She would have liked you, I said, and meant it. Catherine had always been a good judge of character. She would have seen what I saw, someone real, someone steady, someone who wasn't performing a role. After dinner, while Philip and Sarah cleaned up, despite my protests, I stepped outside to the back porch. The same porch where someone had stood a year ago with a key to my house and plans to destroy my life. But tonight it was just a porch again, just wood and steps, and the sound of crickets starting their evening song. Philip joined me a few minutes later, 2 beers in hand. She's good for you, I said. Yeah. Philip took a drink. It's weird, Dad. After everything with Elena, with Isabella, whatever her real name was, I didn't think I'd ever want to trust anyone again. But Sarah makes it feel safe. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Inside, I could hear Sarah laughing at something on TV, a sound that seemed to ease something in Philip's shoulders. I got a letter today, I said. FBI wants survivors to speak at a conference in September. Share our stories, help train law enforcement. Philip looked at me. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Part of me thinks I've talked about this enough, but another part thinks, what if my story helps catch the next Elena Voss before she destroys another family? Then you should go, Philip said firmly. You caught her dad. You saved us. If talking about it saves someone else, that's worth whatever discomfort it costs you. I looked at my son, 34 years old, heartbroken and healing, sitting on my back porch drinking beer and giving me advice. When had he become so wise? You're right, I said. I'll call them tomorrow. Inside, Sarah had found one of Catherine's old photo albums. We spent the next hour looking through pictures, Philip as a baby, as an awkward teenager at his college graduation. Catherine laughing in the kitchen covered in flour from some baking disaster. Our trip to the beach the summer before she got sick. Your mom was beautiful, Sarah said softly, studying a photo from our 20th anniversary. She was, Philip agreed. Inside and out. She never would have let Dad get scammed. She could spot a lie from a mile away. You got that from her, I told him. You found Elena's laptop. You chose to look even though part of you didn't want to know. That's Catherine's instinct for truth. Philip smiled, but his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Grief and healing lived together now, I'd learned. You didn't stop missing someone just because you were moving forward. Sarah left around 10, but Philip lingered on the porch. Dad, he said as he was leaving. Thanks for tonight, for welcoming Sarah, for not making this weird. Why would I make it weird? Because the last woman I brought home tried to rob you blind. We both laughed real laughter that felt like releasing something heavy we'd been carrying too long. Sarah's not Elena, I said, and you're not the man you were a year ago. We're both smarter now. Sadder maybe, but smarter. Philip hugged me tight. Love you, Dad. Love you too, son. After he left, I cleaned up the dinner dishes and thought about the year ahead. The FBI conference, continued support group meetings, more Wednesday dinners with Philip and probably Sarah, Russell's morning coffee visits. Jake teaching me about whatever new technology he thought I needed to learn. A normal life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. I picked up the FBI letter again, and this time I didn't hesitate. I'd call them in the morning. I'd tell my story one more time and then another time after that if it helped. Because Dorothy was right. Staying silent protected the criminals. Speaking up protected the next victim. Elena Voss had thought I was weak because I was old and grieving. She'd thought my trust was a vulnerability she could exploit. She'd been wrong about both things. My trust hadn't made me weak. It had made me human. And my age hadn't made me helpless. It had made me experienced enough to recognize the patterns, stubborn enough to fight back, and wise enough to know when to ask for help. Outside, the spring night was perfect cool breeze, clear stars, the sound of the city settling into sleep. Inside, my house felt like mine again. Not a crime scene. Not a battlefield. Just home. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, already planning tomorrow's pot roast leftovers for lunch with Russell. The dogwoods would bloom again next spring. Life would continue forward, and I would be here to see it stronger for having survived, grateful for the people who'd helped me fight back, and ready to help the next person who needed someone to believe their story. That was enough. That was everything. I closed Catherine's journal and sat back in her old chair, feeling the weight of everything I'd just written. The words on those pages weren't just my story anymore. They were a roadmap for anyone who might need it. A warning. A guide. A promise that fighting back was possible. My phone rang, breaking the silence. Agent Moreno's name appeared on the screen. "Mr. Crawford," she said when I answered. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What's going on?" "I wanted to give you an update. Elena Voss's case has generated significant attention within law enforcement. We've had calls from 3 other states' victims who saw the news coverage and finally felt brave enough to come forward. People she targeted before 2015, before we had any record of her." I gripped the phone tighter. "How many more?" "At least 4 additional victims that we're confirming now. Could be more." She paused. "Mr. Crawford, your decision to fight back, to gather evidence to testify, it's creating a ripple effect. People who thought they were alone are realizing they're not. People who felt too ashamed to report are finding their voices." After I hung up, I sat at Catherine's desk for a long time thinking about those 4 new voices. 4 more people who'd lived in silence carrying shame that wasn't theirs to carry. 4 more families destroyed by Elena's calculations. But they were speaking now. That mattered. The next morning, I drove to the community center for our Tuesday support group meeting. Dorothy was already there, setting up coffee and arranging chairs in our usual circle. She'd taken on the unofficial role of group coordinator, finding purpose in helping others navigate what she'd survived. "Daniel," she called out when she saw me. "I need to tell you something." We sat down before the others arrived. Dorothy pulled out her phone and showed me a text message from her daughter. "Mom, I saw a video online, an elderly man telling his story about almost being scammed by his daughter-in-law. It made me realize I need to check on you more. I'm sorry I haven't been around. I love you." Dorothy's eyes were bright with tears. "My daughter and I haven't spoken properly in 2 years. Not since the mess with the financial advisor. She blamed me for being careless with Dad's money, but she saw something, I don't know what video, and it made her reach out." "That's wonderful, Dorothy." "It made me think," she continued, "how many people are out there right now isolated and scared who just need to hear that someone else survived this, that it's not their fault." By 7 o'clock, our support group had filled up. 8 regulars, and tonight, 2 new faces. An elderly man named George, who'd been scammed by a home repair contractor. A woman named Patricia, whose nephew had been stealing from her for 3 years. They were nervous, ashamed, still processing. I remembered that feeling. "Welcome," I said when it was my turn to speak. "The first thing you need to know is that you're not alone. The second thing is that this wasn't your fault. And the third thing, the most important thing, is that you're already fighting back just by being here." George spoke haltingly about the contractor who'd taken $50,000 for repairs that were never finished. Patricia cried as she described watching her nephew, her sister's son, a boy she'd helped raise, systematically empty her savings account. "I feel so stupid," Patricia whispered. "He was family." "You're not stupid," Dorothy said firmly. "You loved him. That's not stupidity. That's humanity. They count on that." After the meeting, as people filtered out, George approached me. "Agent Moreno gave me your name, said you might be willing to talk about how you did it, how you fought back when it was your own family." We sat in the parking lot for 40 minutes while I told him about Philip, about Elena, about the moment I decided to stop being a victim and start being an investigator. George listened intently, taking notes on the back of an envelope. "I don't know if I can do what you did," he said finally. "I'm 79. I don't understand computers or security cameras or any of that technology." "You don't have to understand everything," I told him. "You just need to find people who do. Jake Martinez taught me about digital security. Diane Foster handled the legal side. Russell checked on me every morning. I didn't do this alone, George. Nobody does." He nodded slowly. "My grandson. He's good with computers. Maybe I could ask him." "Ask him," I encouraged. "Build your team, then fight back." The following week, I received an email from the FBI Victim Services Division. They'd scheduled me to speak at the national conference in September, but they had another request. Would I be willing to participate in a training video for law enforcement, something that could be distributed to police departments nationwide, teaching officers how to recognize and investigate elder fraud? I called Philip that night. "They want me to do a training video for police. I'd have to tell the whole story again on camera, knowing thousands of people will watch it." "What are you thinking?" Philip asked. "I'm thinking about Patricia from support group, and George, and the 4 new victims Agent Moreno told me about. I'm thinking if a police officer in Kansas or Oregon sees that video and recognizes the pattern in a case they're working, that's another Elena Voss caught, another family saved." "Then you already know your answer, Dad." He was right. In late March, I drove to the FBI field office for the video recording. They'd set up a small studio with professional lighting and cameras. Agent Moreno was there along with a victim advocate specialist and a cameraman who looked young enough to be Philip's son. "Mr. Crawford, we're going to ask you questions," the advocate explained. "Just answer naturally like you're talking to a friend. We'll edit it down later, but we want your authentic voice, your authentic story." For 90 minutes, I sat in front of those cameras and relived everything. The night I heard sounds in my backyard, the deleted security footage, the bank fraud attempt, the laptop discovery, the FBI sting operation, the trial. But I also talked about the recovery, about Philip's healing, about the support group, about learning to trust again without being naive. "What would you say to a law enforcement officer who's investigating a case like yours?" the interviewer asked. I looked directly into the camera. "Listen to the victim. Even if they seem confused or embarrassed or can't quite explain what's wrong, listen. Someone who's being exploited often doesn't have all the pieces. They just know something feels off. Take that seriously. Investigate thoroughly. Document everything. And understand that these criminals are sophisticated. They're not cartoon villains. They're professionals who've spent years perfecting their methods. You're not dealing with a simple theft. You're dealing with organized crime. After the recording finished, Agent Moreno walked me to my truck. That was powerful, Daniel, thank you. How many officers will see this? We're distributing it to every FBI field office and making it available to state and local law enforcement nationwide. Thousands of officers, maybe tens of thousands over time. She smiled. Your story is going to save lives. Driving home, I thought about those thousands of officers, each one potentially encountering an elderly person who felt something was wrong but couldn't prove it. Each one now trained to look for the patterns I'd identified. Each one equipped to spot the next Elena Voss before she could finish her con. That night, I opened Catherine's journal again and added a new entry. Martirikis, today I recorded a video that might help catch criminals across the country. I told our story to strangers who will use it to protect other families. You always said that surviving something hard meant you had a responsibility to help others survive it too. I understand that now. Philip is thriving. Sarah is good for him. Russell still comes by every morning. Jake upgraded my security system again. I think he just likes having projects. Dorothy and I are helping new people at support group every week. We're okay, Catherine. We're more than okay. We're fighting back. We're making sure what happened to us helps prevent it happening to others. I think you'd be proud of that. By April, the video had been distributed. Agent Moreno sent me an email with feedback from law enforcement agencies. A detective in Oregon had recognized the patterns in a case he was working and successfully intervened before the victim lost their savings. A sheriff's deputy in Tennessee had used the video to train her entire department on elder fraud recognition. George from support group called to tell me he'd pressed charges against the contractor with help from his grandson and a lawyer Dorothy had recommended. Patricia had cut off her nephew and was working with Adult Protective Services to recover her money. The ripples were spreading. Each person who found their voice encouraged another. Each story shared became armor for someone else. I kept speaking at senior centers. The audiences grew larger. After each talk, people would approach me with their own stories, some seeking advice, others just needing someone to listen and believe them. An elderly woman named Rose told me her son-in-law had been pressuring her to add him to her house deed. But after hearing you talk, I said no. I asked questions. I brought a lawyer to the meeting, and when he got angry that I wouldn't just trust him, that's when I knew you were right. Real love doesn't punish you for asking questions. These moments, Rose standing up for herself, George pressing charges, Patricia cutting off her nephew, those 4 new victims finding their voices, these were the real victories, bigger than Elena's arrest, bigger than the trial verdict. Because we weren't just catching criminals anymore. We were building a community of survivors who refused to be silent, who understood that speaking up protected the next person, who knew that shame belonged to the predators, not the prey. Standing in my kitchen one evening, watching Russell tend Catherine's roses through the window, I realized something. Elena Voss had tried to isolate me, to make me weak and vulnerable and alone. Instead, she'd connected me to thousands of people, survivors, advocates, officers, strangers who'd heard my story and found courage in it. She'd wanted to destroy my family. Instead, she'd helped me build a bigger one, a community of people committed to protecting each other. That was her biggest miscalculation. She thought targeting me would be her biggest payday. Instead, it became her final con. And we were just getting started. When I look back on everything that happened, I understand now that the real danger did not begin with a shadow in my backyard. It began the day I chose comfort over clarity. And to you listening to this story, remember this. The moment something unsettles your spirit inside your own home, do not silence it. Pay attention. Pause. Ask questions. The cost of ignoring that inner warning can be far greater than the discomfort of confronting it. For a long time, I convinced myself I was being patient, thoughtful, supportive. After Catherine passed, all I wanted was for my son to feel whole again. I wanted laughter back in this house. I wanted warmth at the dinner table. I wanted our broken pieces to look repaired. What I did not admit to myself was that grief had softened my judgment. Loneliness had lowered my guard. I confused endurance with wisdom. I confused peace with denial. That was my failure. This family story did not begin at 2:03 in the morning, when I heard metal scrape against wood. It began months earlier when subtle details felt off, and I chose not to examine them too closely. Papers slightly rearranged, questions about insurance that felt a little too specific. A tone shift I brushed aside. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was being overly cautious. Do not be like I was. If documents move and you did not move them, investigate. If someone rushes financial decisions, slow them down. If answers sound rehearsed, ask for proof. Love does not require blindness. Family does not require silence. Many people think stories like mine belong in collections of grandpa stories shared for dramatic effect. But these grandpa stories carry warnings hidden beneath the suspense. They are reminders that age is not weakness. Age is experience sharpened by time. I spent 4 decades identifying fraud in insurance claims. I understood patterns. I knew manipulation. Yet I nearly fell victim in my own living room because I wanted harmony more than honesty. Criminals do not search for ignorance. They search for emotional openings. Grief, loyalty, isolation. If you are listening and thinking, "This would never happen to me," I once believed the same thing. And that belief almost cost me everything Catherine and I built together. Here is what I have learned, and I share it plainly. Boundaries are not acts of distrust. They are acts of protection. Documentation is not paranoia. It is discipline. Verification is not disrespect. It is wisdom. Technology helped save me. A camera mounted on a wall, a timestamp that kept running, a file that refused to disappear. Learn the tools available to you. Ask someone younger to teach you. Pride can cost you dearly. Curiosity can preserve you. Community saved me as well. Russell noticed what I overlooked. Jake uncovered what was hidden. Diane fought where I could not. Alone, I might have doubted myself. Together, we stood firm. Isolation is the predator's strongest ally. Connection is your shield. This family story is not about revenge. It is about responsibility. When I chose to gather evidence and involve authorities, I was not seeking retaliation. I was protecting what my wife and I built with decades of sacrifice. Stewardship is not anger. It is courage applied with clarity. And I will say this once, because it matters deeply to me in the quiet moment when I chose to act instead of ignore. I felt steadied by faith. I believe God gives us discernment in subtle ways, through unease, through intuition, through that quiet nudge to look closer. When we listen, we are guided toward protection rather than regret. If I could go back, I would confront earlier. I would question sooner. I would not allow fear of conflict to silence my instincts. I would not assume that good intentions protect against bad actors. Do not wait for undeniable proof before you protect yourself. Another lesson from these grandpa stories predators are patient. They study routines. They study vulnerabilities. They study emotions. You must be patient too, patient enough to verify, to consult professionals, to document thoroughly. Here is my personal view: dignity grows from action. The moment you defend your boundaries, you reclaim control. The moment you speak up, you weaken manipulation. Silence feeds exploitation. Transparency starves it. If you see yourself somewhere in this family story, Do not let shame keep you quiet. Seek counsel. Contact legal professionals. Reach out to trusted neighbors. Speak openly with adult children about finances and documentation. Secrecy protects no one but the wrong people. You are not too old to learn new systems. You are not too inexperienced to ask for help. You are not too late to strengthen your defenses. Every year you have lived has built resilience within you. Use it. These grandpa stories are not about bitterness. They are about awakening. They are about transforming pain into awareness so that fewer families endure the same fracture. Peace without vigilance is fragile. Trust without verification is incomplete. Love without boundaries is vulnerable. I am not proud that I hesitated. I am proud that I corrected my course. That is the difference between regret and growth. If this message resonates with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need encouragement to ask hard questions. A neighbor, a widowed friend, a parent navigating financial changes. Awareness is protection passed forward. Leave a comment and tell me what lesson stood out most to you. Your reflection might help someone else see warning signs earlier. If meaningful reflections woven through powerful grandpa stories and layered inside a compelling family story matter to you, consider subscribing. It quietly supports conversations that build resilience rather than fear. Every comment strengthens community. Every share expands awareness. Every subscription signals that we refuse to look away. Thank you sincerely for staying with me until the end of this chapter. And one final note. The stories that follow may include dramatized elements crafted for reflection and educational purpose. If that style does not align with what you prefer, feel free to explore other content that better suits you. However you choose to continue, I am grateful you listened.